If we look at the even our modern Arabic numeral system, we can work back and see how that's evolved over time. So it originated apparently in India and had various forms of evolution, which found its way, from what I understand, through Arabia into Spain, as per usual, and thereby into Europe, so that it eventually would become the most prevalent numbering system. And one of the wonderful innovations of that numbering system is the number 0. And just the fact that it's a lot easier to deal with math and mathematical ideas using this numbering system, as opposed, of course, to some of our ancient numbering systems. So we have, of course, the Greek, and I've got the first 10 letters of each of them to go with the decad, to go with our decimal system here. And we have the Hebrew, first 10 letters, and we have abjad, which is the Arabic that would sort of apply to this numerology approach as well. And we have just our basic Roman numerals, which are a lot more rudimentary in the sense that we have obviously like 1 is 1 finger, 2 is 2 fingers, 3 is 3 fingers, and then when we get to 5 we have like the V that makes the whole hand of fingers. 10 is 2 whole hands of fingers, and it gets a little clunky when you get to bigger numbers. One little fun thing, the Hebrew 10, the 10th letter, is Yud, and the Greek I is iota. They both essentially mean the same thing. I think Yud actually means hand, but it's like iota means a jot, which actually stands out a lot more in the Hebrew, where it's like a little jot. Now with Hebrew alphanumerics, we have the first letter, aleph, would be used as the number 1, and then beth would be 2, and we'd go through until we get to 10, and when we get to 10, that's where our yud appears. After that, we've got all our single digits, so we don't have to repeat, we don't have to do 11, 12, and all that sort of thing. We do combinations, so we'd have 20 for kaf, the next letter of the Hebrew alphabet, or aleph bet. And if you wanted to do 11, you'd do a combination of yud and aleph. And so we go in tens, and then after that we go in hundreds. And we also have final letters for some of the Hebrew letters. There's 22 Hebrew letters in the Hebrew aleph bet, and there's a set of them that use final forms as well. They would be at the end of a word. So it would take that final form when that letter appears at the end of a word. Anywhere else in the word, it would appear...
There's 2 types of pe, there's 2 types of nun, I get it.
Yeah. We also have Greek, for instance, and there again, there's a similarity, because we have alpha, beta, gamma, delta, so instead of having... it's still abjad. So it's these all come from a similar language set. They're all very heavily influenced trade all over the Mediterranean region. So, of course, we had these ideas being spread around all over the place there. Lots of cross-pollinization. So, and in the Greek case, we have a few extra letters as well that are archaic letters. So, like for the number 6, for instance, we have this F-looking deal, which has the English equivalent of sort of like a W. Yeah, there's also like this weird Q-looking thing. You know, those became defunct at some point in terms of actual language usage. So I want to give an example of the Hebrew. So for instance, here we have, this is 4 letters, Yud, He, Vav, He. And this is the famous 4-letter name of God, which is often rendered as Yahweh or Jehovah. By Hebrew standards, by Jewish standards, the general sort of approach is not to pronounce it. It's supposed to be held sacred and not pronounced. And if you knew the proper pronunciation, there is an idea that you would destroy the world by pronouncing it. I think I'm probably going to butcher this to some extent, but there was a Jewish practice of entering the Holy of the Holies once a year, having the high priest enter the Holy of the Holies and pronounce the name. And that was the one time that was allowed to happen.
I think that's Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah, sounds about right. Which is the head of the year.
Yes, it's
what that
New
means.
Year,
Yeah. And so that, if we take the enumeration of each of these, we have that friendly little yud, the jot, that enumerates to 10. And then we have the hays both enumerate to 5, and the 6 for vav. And that four-letter name is also known as tetragrammaton. Enumerating to 26, we have aheva and achad both enumerate to 13. And the idea is that 13 plus 13 equals 26. Well, first of all, if love, the Hebrew word for love and the Hebrew word for one, aheva and achad, respectively, if they both enumerate to 13, then that suggests that there's some kind of resonance between those two ideas. That's behind this gematria sort of concept, is that if they enumerate to the same thing, then you can say that there's some quality that they share in common or something to be gleaned from that. Even if they seem to be diverse, you can glean something from that. So the idea being that this can be very fruitful for meditation. You can definitely send yourself off the rails with it, but we'll get to that later. So the idea that 13 plus 13 equals 26 suggests that there's a relationship between love, oneness, and them being the constitution of tetragrammaton. I mean, there's also the contrary point of view, like there's a Gnostic concept of the demiurge, and there's a common attribution of Yud-He Vav-He as the Old Testament jealous god that is sort of like this demiurge that is something that was created that thinks it's God, and it gets tied into this whole Gnostic idea. So if that is the way that you read this, you could conceivably say that, well, if you're taking 13 times 2, that's creating duality instead of oneness. So you could make an argument for that. So here's an example for Greek, which we can tie into Thelema, of course. I'm usually like, well, we don't want to give workshops just explaining that Thelema means will and it equates to 93, but Thelema means will, and it equates to 93. So we have the enumeration of each of the letters from the Greek Isopsephy, the same thing as Gematria, and we add them all up, we get 93. This word is agape. Oh, and incidentally, this particular word, Thelema, we also have this particular word for love, agape. In Greek, there's a lot of words for these ideas. So, like, for instance, there's a lot of words especially for love, and it depends on the context and the application. So you have, like, filial love, you have various types of love, but in this case, agape is used particularly as the highest form of love, as the love of humans for God, and the love of God for humans. And Thelema, meaning will, is used particularly as divine will, as in, thy will be done, from the Lord's Prayer. So the fact that Thelema is being applied as will, I mean, there's the most famous thing you probably get from Thelema is the saying, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. And it sounds like do what you want, and it might mean that to some extent, but it particularly seems to be tied because the connotation of will in this case is related to divine will. And love is the law, love under will is the response, and that is related to divine love. Now, we could delve into this further as well. So we have Thelema equates to 93, agape equates to 93, so we could say that there's it's almost like love is hidden, implicit in will. We could also note, we could do further analysis to further our investigations and to help augment our meditations. We could say that the word Thelema, well, we could observe that it's 6 letters, and think of the six-pointed star. And that six-pointed star represents the macrocosm and divinity. Particularly, it's the uniting of the macrocosm and the microcosm, so the individual with divinity. We have the upward-facing triangle and the downward-facing triangle, sort of like the aspirant uniting with the descending Godhead. The 5-letter agape, which is implicit in Thelema, is representative of the 5-pointed star, the pentagram. And the pentagram represents the individual, the microcosm, but really the perfected individual. So we have the 4 elements, fire, water, air, and earth, which are the parts of the individual, and they have spirit. They are crowned with spirit. So this pentagram is a symbol of the equilibrated individual, and therefore you could take it as the adept. So we have these 2 ideas, and we could say that that unites the 2 ideas, and if we have 6 with 5, that brings up another Thelemic idea. An idea that elaborates upon the idea of 6 and 5 is the word abrahadabra. Not abracadabra, it's the adjusted word abrahadabra. And that is 5 A's interpenetrating 6 diverse letters. So the symbolism behind this word is the combination of the pentagram and the hexagram, which is an explicit uniting of the microcosm and the macrocosm, humanity and divinity. It represents the great work accomplished. So whatever the great work is, you may be entering upon the path of initiation and not know what to say about the great work. This is why we might say, it's common practice to say will before meals, which is like, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.
What is thy will?
Thank you. It is my will to eat and drink,
To what end?
that my body may be fortified thereby,
To what end?
that I may accomplish the great work.
Love is the law, love under will.
Fall 2. Now the reason for this is, obviously it kind of imitates grace before meals, but it's specifically getting clear we're eating in order that we can continue to work along the path to accomplishing the great work. And we may not know what that is at the outset, or we may think we know what that is at the outset, but it will evolve as we further ourselves on the path. There's a way in which the reality and the truth of the adept is not understood by the vulgar who are outside and have not tread upon the path. And yet, the truth of the master of the temple is not understood by the adept. At each stage of the game, your understanding changes, or should change. And if you're grasping on to your idea about reality, then that can prevent you from further understanding, further evolution, further change. But we can sort of do this kind of thing, taking the enumerations and following them out and connecting them with other ideas, and it can give us food for thought, food for meditation, and may give us surprises in other ways. Now, Crowley says of this from our 777 and other Kabbalistic writings. There's a paper on Gematria that it opens with, and he says of this, of course, with powers so wide, it is easy for the partisan to find his favorite meaning in any word, which is very true. Even the formal proof, 0 equals 1 equals 2 equals 3 equals 4 equals 5 equals whatever number you want to try and make it equal, is possible. But, he says, the adept who worked out this theorem, presumably himself, I would think, with the very intent to discredit the Kabbalistic mode of research, was suddenly dumbfounded by the fact that he had actually stumbled upon the Kabbalistic proof of pantheism or monism. And I guess basically implying that that means that God is in all numbers, or every number is infinite, there is no difference. What really happens, he says, is that the adept sits down and performs many useless tricks with the figures, without result. Suddenly the lux dawns, and the problem is solved. Lux is Latin for light, but it's used here instead of light because he's alluding to the fact that lux is the keyword from the Golden Dawn's adept grade. And so this lux is specifically a divine light, or a concept related to divine light. But yeah, this is pretty much what we're looking at with Gematria, is that you can be doing all these different things, playing around with these numbers and things, and then the lux, the light, dawns on you, and you have some aha moment.